Hello and welcome to another episode of Supercoach Insider. My name is Chris and today we are celebrating the greatness that is the SetterGOAT. We had a great week this week, guys. Really come back after a pretty poor showing in round one there. Weekly rank this week of 62, which just was insane. If you follow me on Twitter, which is at CFX_1. You probably would have noticed that I was going a little bit crazy over on Twitter, thinking that I'd won the weekly, and I missed it by about 70 points. So not even close. That'll learn me. That's put me at a total score of 4462 and put me into an overall rank of 500. So in the top 1,000 already, which is quite nice, and looking to move up the ranks. All three of us Supercoach Insider boys have gone pretty well, obviously off the back of Setterfield. Big score, and that's really set us aside from most of the comp. We were pretty heavy into him, and we all started him. Also, all three of us started Jack Zeeble, so those two picks alone, I think they were both under 4% ownership when they started the season, and we were all on it and promoting it heavily. So if you're watching this, you're probably a fan of us, and you probably thought to start them. If you did, like and comment. Shout out to the SetterGOAT. We'll roll on. This podcast will be a weekly series, of course. Do check us out on all our other social platforms. So obviously the regular podcast available normally throughout all of our podcast platforms. Last week, you may have noticed that we didn't launch it onto just an audio platform. We only had it on YouTube available. And that's mainly because Ben just ran out of time with all the editing processes, trying to manage 100 different things at once, second last week of the term, and he's just run out of time. So we do apologise for that, but this week we will get on top of it. As you can imagine, running this constantly, and he does all the editing. So hats off to Ben for all the extra effort that he does go to with us. It makes it a bit harder. We're going to try and streamline the process again moving forward. We look forward to it. So, look forward to that. Catch us on all them at SC Insider 100 on Twitter, on SoundCloud, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, you name it, we're on it. Also, you can catch us on TikTok and YouTube, of course. Just search for Supercoach Insider. Now let's get into the team and what I ended up doing with my trades. So on the back of my team last week, I mentioned that I was likely trading out Hopper, Ash, and maybe it was Hopper, Ash, and Jones, or Hopper, Ash, and Chesser. I ended up backflipping on that, and I only went and traded. I saved the boost, and I only went and traded in Dacos. So I went Ash to Dacos. Straight swap. And then the second trade I brought in McKenna. So who did I trade out for McKenna? I can't even remember. I might have to look back through my trade tracker. But I definitely brought in McKenna last week as well. Oh, Fergus Green is the other one. So my reasoning for that is that I figured that with them playing Sydney, I could see a poor score looming, and then why would I want them in round 3 anyway? Probably not. Now, it turns out that the only reason why he really scored bad is because he really shot for goal quite poorly, and I think he had 0 goals for at the end of the game, and still got almost 50. So he actually performed quite well in the game, but the goals weren't there, which meant the score wasn't there. He's not someone that I'm guessing people are looking to keep. They're probably looking to either transition him to, say, a Chandler or moving on to another piece due to his poor scoring so far in the season. So that was a good one. Ash didn't end up going too bad. However, I was expecting him to have a little bit of a better role anyway this week, with obviously Whitfield out. And so it wasn't necessarily a trade just for that. It was because long term, I don't see his role going to be sufficient enough. And so Ash got 94. That's fine. I'm okay with that because I traded him to Dacos, who got 149. So, I got a 55-point upswing. McKenna 78 on field, which allowed me, obviously, to not play Chesser in that role. And a lot of people might be asking, how if you didn't catch my last week pod, how did I actually even get the money to be able to do that? Well, before the first bounce of the North Melbourne game in round 1, I traded out Cunnington early to go to Sheasel because I obviously heard about the news that he was moving to halfback, which meant that I started the week with 220k in the bank. So I didn't have to really make massive changes in my squad to be able to get Dacos, and I was able to make a structural change with one trade, which really, really impacted my team in a positive direction. So, yeah, I don't want to toot my own horn or anything, but I also did say that I'll gloat enough on this podcast so that I don't have to do it so much in the group podcast, because I think that they might have enough of me by the end of that. So, yeah. Dad, do you mind grabbing me a drink? I forgot to... I'm very parched over here. Sorry, guys. I just need a beverage. My dad's actually up for 3 weeks, so I got to spend some time with him, and now he gets to hear me podcast. Isn't that awesome?
What kind do you want?
Just a bourbon and coke, thanks, mate. So going through the team. So Doherty, what did I notice out of Sam Doherty? And I do want to touch on him. This is the one game in that early fixture that I was a bit worried about. Not necessarily because I didn't think he would be able to score. I still think he could score, but it's the only hard matchup that they have. And then it absolutely opens up for Carlton coming up. So if you have a look at the fixtures, I'm good. Thank you. If you have a look at the fixtures for Carlton, hold on 1 second. I'm just going to bring that up here. Why is this not working? There we go. Carlton. So from this week, now they've got the Giants this week, then North, then Adelaide, then Saints, then Eagles. So they've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 fixtures that you want to have him for. And I'm seeing a lot of people being like, hey, I should transfer Doherty to Dacos because that seems like a great move. Just remember why you chose Doherty in the first place. Because the reason I chose Doherty was because of this early run in the early season. I knew I would want to get him for this run, and therefore I started him. So trading him out now doesn't really make any sense to me. Now, do I think that his role has changed? No. He's still the general down back. I just feel like in games where they're not switching or utilising that position as often, he may suffer in his scoring. The fact that they're obviously sharing a little bit of kickouts isn't helpful. But I do think that he can bounce back very, very simply and very, very easily. And I still think that he's a shout to average somewhere between 105 to 110. But I'm going to ride these 5 games out and then see if he's a correction at the buys. He's not a correction now. I don't think that is worth it. He's not going to drop enough cash to make that really worth it. So yeah, he's a hold for me, guys. Ridley, I was looking at... So here's the thing with Ridley this week. And I want to be specific about this. First of all, late, when BZT went down, he was moved on to Ben King. So that is something to watch. Now, they did say that BZT is probably going to it's just a rolled ankle and he'll be fine. But one to watch, because if he's not named, and they don't bring in a suitable replacement into that spot, then I don't like the idea of him playing as a lockdown tool. Having said that, Gold Coast shut off the switch for the whole game. So it forced them down the line, and they weren't using that extra pass to Ridley, even on kickouts, when Ridley wasn't on them. Now, he did lead the kickouts. He had 6, Redmond had 4, and then there was a sporadic couple of here and there. Redmond wasn't passing to him even when he was open. Now, I'm not sure if that was game plan or if they look at that tape and go, hey, take that 20 metres or 30 metres out to Redmond, who's to Ridley, who we want to be able to use the ball, or they just trust Redmond to kick it long down the line, or that's their game plan. I actually don't know. So it'll be interesting to see. But yeah, just didn't have that, obviously without the switchability, without the complete monopoly on hitouts. And then I also noticed he dropped like 2 or 3 really easy intercept marks that he would otherwise gobble up. So even if you just add those, he probably hits 95, let alone the other factors of the game that didn't allow it. Now, I was looking at transitioning out of Ridley. However, now he plays the Saints this week. And we've just seen 2 back-to-back weeks of the Saints giving up big numbers to defenders. So I'm not interested in taking him out at all. And he will be in my side. So I'm going to ride the waves with him for a while. Again, if it doesn't work out, he might be a buy flip, but I don't think so. I think he's going to be around the market. Worst case scenario is going to be a D6 for me, so can't really complain. All right, the Dick Dacos show. He's a must-have now, and I think that you won't get him cheaper. The thing is, I'm sure at some point someone tags him properly, and that will happen, and that's fine. But now coaches must be scratching their heads going, how do we tag this guy? So is it worth tagging him if he's just going to get 32 disposals and 2 goals anyway? Probably not. Or what's the point in putting all that time and effort into trying to get him that way? And why don't they just try and use their extra numbers somewhere else and get damage out of that instead of trying to limit his production, which just does not seem to work. He burned off Lockie Jones faster than any. I've never seen something like that, as dominant as that, in terms of a direct, hard tag that he just ran off. Lockie Jones gave him 1.5 meters, and he was on the other side of the contest sprinting away, and Lockie Jones had no chance of keeping up. It was a sight. One of the best performances by a guy that was getting tagged that I've seen. It reminded me of back in the day when Ablett used to get tagged every single week. He had to get tagged because he was just too good. That's what it reminded me of. Definitely crazy. When he hit 100 early, I was like, wow, this is going to the moon. And I was really happy with that trade. What do I think he averages? Well, again, over a 9-game stretch last year, we saw that he averaged 112. So I think 110's in the books. He's going to be rivaling the other guys that are going to be averaging 110. If we get 5 around that mark, and look, so far early in the season, it doesn't look like there's going to be a large amount of defender types that are going to be averaging that sort of number. But stranger things have happened. I mean, outside of the Freo guys, of course. But yeah, Sicily looks good, but his Supercoach to DT rating is not great. I don't know what that is about. A lot of the times I'm noticing when he's getting a lot of uncontested ball. He hasn't got many, loose ball gets or intercept marks yet. His numbers aren't too high in that regard. And so that could be negatively impacting it. When he's using the ball from an uncontested situation, a lot of times he's passing backwards or switching the ball instead of going forwards. And that impacts directly the Supercoach score. When you go forward 40 meters, that's a long effective kick. If you go backwards, it's not considered, it's still considered an effective kick, but you don't get points for going forwards. And there is actually a direct correlation between kicking backwards and kicking forwards. There's a points difference there. Same with handballs. I think a backwards handball is actually only worth 1 point, whereas it's 2 or 2.5 for a forward handball. So yeah, those inside mids that always are looking to offload the ball behind them, not going to get as much unless it's a contested possession. But if it's a uncontested handball backwards, you don't actually score much points. I think it might be 1. So yeah, just something to be aware of, that backwards possessions aren't really great for Supercoach. And so I'm looking at that and going, okay, that's probably where his correlation is. It's the lack of intercepts, possessions. Don't get me wrong, he's still getting some. He's just not getting really high numbers. And the way he's using the ball is different. Part of that is because I noticed he did get kickouts again this week. So that that role is just forever changing, and it's crazy. I don't know about Sicily. I'm just not really 100% on him. Now Jones, so kept him. Jones is pretty good. He wasn't amazing. He probably could have scored a little bit more. What I'm looking at Jones, and I am looking to keep him this week, is I think Gardner comes back this week, so Bruce is probably gone, which frees Jones up to play a little less accountable. And you think that he may be that guy that is the intercept marker in that team. So I want to see that dynamic before I start trading him out. And I've also got another week. His break-even's actually 46. So the good news is with someone like Jones is we got next week on the bubble, we'll have Bowes and Crozier. So if those two both go crazy, obviously if Crozier you can just go down, he's 10k cheaper. Or Bowes 50, if you can somehow manage to range 50k, and I've got a little bit of a plan for that later, but you might go Jones to Bowes and go up. So I'm definitely keeping him for this week and just to see how I can play next week. But I understand that Jones might be one that he may be expendable in your team if you need to free up cash or some other way to do it. McKenna played well, linked the play really, really well, and I think that's probably what I underestimated in the preseason. Even though he didn't get many kickouts, it was just the way that he linked the play. He got really high up the ground and got a lot of intercept possessions and contested ball. But when he gets it, it's, I think there was one play where he got an intercept possession, effective handball, followed up, handball receive, another handball over top, followed up, handball receive, and then kicked it inside 50. And there was a goal assist. Like that, I think that play alone was worth about 10 or 12 points. And that's what he's really good at. So he doesn't necessarily need to impact all game, but he has these little patches where he gets on runs and gets 10, 15 points here and there. So he can score really quickly and in bunches. And so that's what I've noticed with him. Constable, I thought he was way better than last week in terms of his use. I'm not sure. I have to go back and rewatch the tape. Like there was one really bad clanger where he was there was a mark taken just outside 50 and he ran past for the handball received to fire it inside, but the hand pass fell short, and so he had to stretch to get it. And by the time that he stretched to get it, the pressure of the forwards that came right in, so he just had to sort of slam it on the boot. And there was three Essendon players just lining up in the middle there. So it was a direct clanger. And so, yeah, I didn't think that his game was all that bad. 67, I thought, was unders on what the performance I saw. Provided a lot of run, was in the right spots, took some intercepts. I really liked him. I think that he's, even though that Powell probably comes back either next week or the week after, I think he's pretty safe in his job security, to be completely honest. I think that he's the one that they want to keep there. I think Hewland is more likely to go. I think Darcy Mack played pretty good this week, but again, I think that he might be the one to go. Long played shocking. I don't know how he's getting a game. Long was probably the worst out of the bunch. So they've got a few guys there that I think will make way before Constable does. So I think he's going to be okay as a fieldable option. I am actually looking to change him to the bench though, and I'll go through that in my trades. Wilmot played well, played a little bit further behind the ball, was up around the contest on the wing. As the spare behind the contest for that easy handball out to transition the ball. Worked really well and was good for his scoring. Obviously, that role's probably going to change next week when Coleman comes back. But he got a nice little spike right before, so he went to hold. Cowan played brilliant. I love Cowan. He's never getting dropped. Kid makes great decisions, great user of the ball, beelines the ball, makes things happen. There was one play where ball was coming in, bit of a helicopter ball into the middle of about 4 or 5 players. They all it bounced and they're all watching, and he's the only one. Bang, hits the ball full speed, takes on the tackler, gets spun around, easy handball, and the ball's transitioned into the forward line for a shot at goal. All because he took it on himself to do that, not getting dropped. That would be shown absolutely in the coach's box, and they would definitely bring that up during the week. So, yeah, not going anywhere. I held the faith with Laird, so that was the big thing, obviously. So I said to myself, if he scores over 120, I'll probably hold him. Anything less than that, he was getting traded. Guy went 147, looked all over the park. I felt like his matchup was Hopper, and they obviously were matched up at quite a few times at stoppages, but then they just went each other's way. And a lot of the times, Hopper was completely open. I'm like, who's on Hopper? In the middle of the centre square with no one on him, and Laird would be on the other side somewhere like 20 metres away. So they just let him run free, and they let Hopper run free, and they were like, okay, we're going to play our guy versus your guy and see who wins. So yeah, that was a good comeback game for Laird. Great VC option. I jumped on, so obviously Bont was pretty good, but I know a lot of people had his VC, so I did gain a little bit of points there. Green was a bit underwhelming, but I think the GWS performance overall was pretty underwhelming after the first quarter anyway. They just got run over the top of by West Coast, and they just didn't match them in the contest, and that's what happened. Green was a bit uncharacteristic with his disposal, which led to a little bit of a lighter score, but I don't anticipate him dropping that kind of score all too often. Still averaging 120 over 2 games, so can't really complain. The GOAT, Setterfield. What do I say about Setterfield that I haven't already said? I actually said last week on the podcast for those paying attention that the most impressive thing about Setterfield last week was that he was not making any impact inside, not at all. However, he still managed to, his spread from the contest enabled him to get enough of a score that he pumped out a 99. He picked up, I think he only had 3 contested disposals last week from 25 or 26 possessions, which is insanely low, especially when you had 70, I think he had 76% CBAs. So he was in there and he had the opportunity to be in there and to collect balls at stoppage, and he just didn't. This week was different. From the first bounce, from the get-go, he was lining up either on Tuke Miller or Matt Rowell and just applied just heaps of body pressure on them at the contest, and just never, if he was on, whoever he was on at the contest, barely got a look in for a possession. He was either running them under the ball so that they would fumble or not be able to take clean possession and immediately tackle them, or in between them, he was sharking taps and then getting handballs out. He was spreading better, and they just didn't go with him. And I'm not sure if they just didn't go with him because you got Parrish and Merritt and Shield that were also playing really well. So they were like, oh, well, let's focus on these guys. Setterfield's out the other end, and he just gets a handball over the top. Bang, Setterfield's inside 50. He had 11 inside 50s in the game. And I was shocked. The coaches' votes only had Setterfield as 4 votes, and it was a bit of a sporadic board. So I think one coach maybe didn't even give him any votes. And yeah, it's a strange thing because I thought he was by far best on ground by an absolute mile. Parrish, don't get me wrong, had a very good game, and I would suggest that too. Obviously, Langford played well. They had quite a few winners on the day. Redmond was really, really good up to halftime, sort of trailed in the second half. But Setterfield was just everywhere. In the contest, applying tackle pressure, kicking a goal out of nowhere, that just came. Clearing the ball, he had multiple clearances. Yeah, he was. I watched on the couch earlier, and Jonathan Brown said that he had 2 matches this year are his highest rated games of his career because he's playing midfield. And he just never got the opportunity at Carlton. So it's just that classic, same sort of thing as Will Brodie, of course, trading to a new club, play them in the right role. Oh, look, they can actually do it. But was never going to get there with Cripps in the team because you can't play Cripps and Setterfield. You'd be too slow in the midfield. So it's actually a perfect setup for him where they didn't have a type like him. And it'll be interesting to see what they do with him this week because Jack Steele's obviously out with his collarbone. So what happens with Setterfield? Because he would have been the natural option to go to Jack Steele, and he obviously did in the preseason game. Who is he going to take? Because there's no point in taking, say, a Seb Ross or similar. Seb Ross sometimes does negating roles anyway. I'm not sure. Crouch, maybe. I'm not sure. He might be too aggressive for him. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see. But, yeah, best on ground performance. I've already mentioned Hopper. Won't go through him. Ashcroft. What's interesting about Ashcroft? Dropped in CBAs. He had about half the amount of CBAs that he had in the first game. And that sort of just eased it up. So I think this might be something that they continue with. They played him off a wing a lot instead of in the middle, and they played him he was obviously up around the contest anyway, so he did rotate through stoppage, but just not a lot of CBAs, and that just let him get an eye in, and he was able to use his ability to spread from contest, and is very good in traffic. So when he did get the ball, he used it quite well. So super impressive game, but. 31 disposals to get 105 only, and that's going to be an issue for him moving forward. Needs to get a little bit more contested ball, a little bit more inside, needs to be utilised that way, but I'm absolutely wrapped with him. Obviously, big bounce back game. Mackenzie also dropped in the CBAs, unfortunately, was played a little bit more forward. Will Day skyrocketed in CBAs. He went up to 62%. And we also had Connor Nash that jumped in with some CBAs, and so he was the one to suffer. I don't think his spot's vulnerable at all. I think he's still played all right, but he really needs to be around the ball to be able to score really well. I would love to be able to be in a position to rotate him, and that's what I'm doing with my team is trying to move him to M8, and so that'll be part of the trade section that I'll go through a little bit later. Jimby was, again, really, really good. Again, inside tackle pressure, took some contested marks, great use. He's going to be a fantastic Supercoach player for years. I won't go through the bench options there, of course. Witts, really poor first half. I think in the first half he only had 42 points. So ended up with a 66-point second half, and most of that was from his tap work around the ground. Had a goal, of course, where he was just open on his own in the goal square and obviously was unmarked. And don't get me wrong, he played all right, but yeah, his 108 might have been a bit overs for what his result was. I was really hoping he'd get to, say, a 110 mark. But he played all right. You know, Draper's no slouch in terms of physical ability. He's just not very good, ruckman in his own right. So I'm glad that he ended up pulling it together for us. Obviously, Marshall 129 is great for us. That's what I'm not expecting on a normal week. And quickly, I'll go through the forwards. So this forward line is this is probably the best of the forward line you can get. I mean, unless you could probably trade out, say, Taranto for Cogs. The money just doesn't work in that regard. 557 is Cogs' price. He had a great week one. Dropped in CBAs this week. Started with a 51-point quarter and then only had 55 points for the rest of the game. So yeah, that was not worrying, but his trend sort of went with GWS. First quarter, they were awesome. Yeah, I think he had like 6 tackles in the first quarter or something stupid. So a lot of the momentum was coming from Cogs and his pressure on the ball. And then they just fell away. So that was unfortunate. Dunkley went all the way up to 90% CBAs in this game. So they realised that they absolutely got smacked in contested ball. Went, okay, let's just get Dunkley around the ball and see what we can do. So 117 was really good for him. Rosie dropped in CBAs, had a concussion HIA test, which was part of that. So he dropped from 83% last week down to 50% flat. So part of that was that. Part of it was that they were rotating more because when Boak came on, he had about 26% CBAs. But they got trashed. And one of the trends that I noticed is that the guys that got trashed, so Dogs, Port, etc., the losing coach was more willing to throw the pieces around, throw the magnets around, try and get a different mix, try and win some center clearances, try and change things up. And the more that they did that, the more that impacted Supercoach. So guys like McRae were thrown outside. Guys like Rosie didn't get as much inside time as they normally would have, played a little bit more forward. Still managed 92. Now, if you paid attention to our Port pod at the start of the season, all he needs is like 50-55% CBAs to be able to score, because he does score really well as a forward as well. So we've got to be mindful of that. No need to panic sell Rosie, in my opinion, at the moment. I think he's still easily top 6 forward. So just hold your horses on that one. Taranto, this is Taranto. And if you don't understand that by now, then you never understand it. He's going to get a lot of ball, which is going to mean that he's going to have a fairly high floor, but because of his disposal efficiency, it really restricts his ceiling. And so you get games that are like 95, 105, 110, 120, 80, 85. That's just Taranto. It's how he's always been. So nothing to write home about. That's just what it is. Goulden, I was so impressed with his game. Maintained 50% CBAs. Can't get out of his pick. He's an absolute jet. Yeah, his work rate is unbelievable, and I look forward to having him in my Supercoach team for like the next 10 years. Zeeble, probably between him and Setterfield and starting those two, they would be the 2 picks that I would suggest most people are looking to get in the most as your 1 and 2 must-haves this week, and I already have them. So, pat on the back to myself. Zeeble's absolutely goated. Best thing about Zeeble is that he's able to help Sheasel, and Sheasel said that, look, I've never played in defence before, but Jack just tells me where to go. So he literally, his positioning is because of Jack Zeeble. That's working well because of Jack Zeeble. This isn't changing. This is going to hold steady for as long as they're winning and everything's working well. Hall is not coming into that team at all, unless they have an injury to like Goda or Bergman, or they've got a reason to drop people. Like there's none. He's not. I think he had 42 disposals and 2s. He's not playing 1s. He might want to have a chat with the coach about changing roles and maybe playing half forward himself, or transitioning up to a wing, something like that. Because Sheasel and Zeeble are killing it back there, and their game plan's working. They're winning, so why change it? All right, so thanks for going through the team. I just want to go through some trades that I'm doing. So a couple of opportunities. My number one thing that I want to do this week is I want to basically move my D6 off field. My D6 is currently Constable. I want to move him off field. How do I do that? By stretching the midfield and then moving Jinby back into defence. Now, the number one guy and the number one target that I want is Warple. Warple played fantastic. Again, super impressed with him, even though he actually dropped in CBAs. He actually still got, I think, 99 or 98 points. Could have been higher, but they lost by 100. Like, in an absolute drubbing, he's still putting up numbers. But he's learned how to use the ball to their advantage now, and that's not what we saw last year. He would just hack the ball to unknown. Now he's kicking to a contest. Is that the benefit of just everyone in a year in the system more and they understanding him more and he's learning more or whatever? I don't know, but he's not one that I really want to miss, and he's fairly high owned as well. So my point of difference is going to be having Setterfield, Hopper and Warple all in the midfield, as well as Jay-Z up forward, meaning that I'm basically got all of the best mid prices in my squad. And by adding him in, I push Constable into my mid bench. Now that's going to be handy, say this week, where Hopper's tipped to actually he may not play, so I'll just be able to play Constable on field. That's going to help us, of course. And also what I've I suppose been toying with in terms of my decision making process is this week a lot of people are moving to get my points of difference. So they're going to move in to get Setterfield. They're going to move in to get Jay-Z. If I don't make a positive move in my team to try and improve my team while I've got the opportunity to do so, then I don't get the step up that I probably should be for having those guys in my team. I just end up being like every other team and now just trying to outwit them. I need to try and make a move to make my team a little bit better this week. So that's what I'm doing. Now, how am I doing that? So I don't want to say that I'm not doing this, but I also don't want to say that I'm not doing this. But I've been chatting to a lot of people, and I think that it's the right move to do. I'm going to trade Wits. So, yeah. Why? It's not his scoring. It's not his durability. I picked him for his durability. It's none of that. There's a few reasons why. First of all, it's Darcy Cameron's obviously what I'm going to trade him to. So going down to Darcy gives me about 150 grand. And then I can also trade out Philippou to Chandler. And then I get a rookie all the way up to Warple. So I gain points from D6 on field. So let's say, Constable's currently averaging 61. Warple's averaging 98. That's almost 40 points per game. Wits is averaging 124. Take that down to Darcy Cameron, who's averaging 120. So, obviously I don't see that as a likely outcome. But what I do think is that we've got enough data now to represent that it's unlikely that any of the potential DPP changes in round 6 are going to be a top 6 style forward. We've also lost Gawn in that discussion, and we've lost Grundy because Grundy will now be obviously playing permanent main ruck. So who are the guys that we're looking at that are going to come in round 6 and going to make an impact? I don't see them, and I don't think that there will be any. So who are now the top 6 forwards? Well, to me, it's the big 5. So it's, Dunkley, Rosie, Taranto, Goulden, Cogs. And Darcy Cameron could float into that 6 quite easily. Especially with the current form that he's in and the ruck split. So what I was scared of going in is that they were going to be a 50-50 ruck split. Well, for week 1 and week 2, it's 70-30 Cameron Cox. And it's working. Really working. Both of those guys are probably in career best form. Cox, even though he's only got limited possessions, every time he's near the ball, something happens positively for Collingwood. Either he clunks a mark, they transition the ball really quickly, or he's in the forward line and he gets a goal. He's very accurate at goal, obviously, which also helps. His tap work, sometimes he may not make the mark, but he'll make a really smart play and knock it to the advantage of one of our running players going past. That sort of deft touch, because he's a ruckman and he's training that craft, and he's actually a pretty smart footballer as well. That sort of thing is awesome. Really great. What I've noticed, though, from Cox is that he is now getting a huge mismatch in the forward line, because they used to be able to, basically they play Jeremy McGovern on him, but not even play anywhere close to him, because they knew that they could cover Cox if they needed to. They can't do that anymore. And McStay's now come in and taken the number 1 defender. So that's leaving Cox, one out with the third tall third tall defender. And he's dominating. No one's getting near him when he's jumping at the ball. So it's going to continue as far as I look forward. And I know if it's 70-30, it's probably like 105 that he averages. And you guys might be like, oh, there's no way he's doing it. No, it's true. If you look at the ruck splits in the past for Collingwood, when he has over 70, his score goes through the roof. There was a time when he was, I think if he was a main ruck, like a 75, 80% ruck, that he would be close to a 110 average, Cameron, as a ruckman. Now, how he gets his points is a little bit different than most rucks. He gets it mostly from around the ground, his contested work inside. This week, he had 18 disposals and 16 contested possessions, and a lot of clearances, of course. But his ability to get contested marks and intercept marks also drives his score. He's not the best tap ruckman, but that's great. He doesn't need to be because he scores so much when he's just around the footy. And his use around the ground, they say don't handball to a ruckman. You can handball to Darcy Cameron quite clearly, and his use is really, really good. He's going to hit the target. So there's all pros, and the way that they're playing, why change it? It doesn't make sense if they do. I'm locking in Darcy Cameron. Frees up that cash. If we can match Wits, let's say 10 points per game under, 20 points per game under, I still gain between 30 and 40 points on Warple to D6. So it's a huge points gain. It's a money gain as well because I think Warple makes more cash than Philippou, or around the same, but in a quicker time frame as well. So I think it's a win-win, and it's going to differentiate my side early to all the other sides that are in the comp. So I'll go through and show you how that looks to me, but that's the justification of the picks. So yeah, trading out Wits, and I'm also going to trade out Chesser. That's going to be the Chandler. So I am actually using a boost this week, and Philippou. So those are the guys going out. In comes Darcy Cameron. What's happening here? Man, I swear sometimes it just does not want to work for us. Today, Junior. We'll be bringing Warple in, I'm sure, at some point, if it ever actually connects. Do you guys also have trouble with the Supercoach website every now and then? Every now and then it just decides to absolutely can itself for no reason. All right, let's see if we can recover this somehow. Apologies, guys. Technical difficulties. And it's down. Is it down? Oh, well. All right. Well, while that's loading, I will obviously put those guys into my team. We'll go through a little bit of VC and C. So I have mentioned to the lads. Now, what's saving me so far? I had Wits captain round 1, who went 140 for me. And then round 2, I had VC Laird, which is 147. So, I'm going to exit the page here. It seems like Supercoach is down, of course. Let's see if we can bring it back. Bring it back. I'm not sure how we're going here, guys, and I do apologise for this. This always seems to happen to me. Here we go. We're coming back in. Yeah, it must have just been freaking out for whatever reason. Edit team. Ammo back. All right. Sorry, guys. All right, now let's see if we can do this properly. Trade. We're going to trade you. And we're going to trade you. All right. So let's get Darcy. Cameron. And then Warple. And then, so yeah, we're going to get a rookie correction in here. Now, Chandler's the interesting one, guys. So, look, you would have, again, if you follow anything that I've done, and so there's the 3 trades there and what it looks like. So points-wise here, I mean, obviously, it's just a massive, massive upgrade. Absolutely massive. So, yeah, you can't really go wrong there. Obviously, 3 trades and a boost. but it's setting me up long term. I feel like I have the ideal team with these trades. The only ones that I'm missing, obviously, is LDU, Cogs. I think they're the big ones. And, of course, Clary. So outside of those three, I feel like I've got most of the good picks. Yeah, I don't think I'm missing much else. So that's how it will line up. Constable, obviously, I'll pop the E on now. If you want, you can also... Actually, no, I'll probably leave the E on Baker because they played the Thursday night game. And then that will allow me to loop him if Hopper is named out. So that's on the Friday. So you get a look at Baker's score before you actually commit to holding Hopper, which is good for those. Otherwise, I can just obviously flip Constable in if I don't like Baker's score. But hopefully Hopper plays. Fingers crossed, and hopefully he is all good. So cover all over the place. The plan is this, and here's the last reason why I'm looking to trade. Max Gorn goes down on 0. He's probably 4 weeks away, they reckon, with a medial. So he needs 2 games. So he's got to play a game to drop cash, which he will. And then he's going to drop cash again, probably 2 consistent weeks after that. It works out he's probably going to drop to just over 500k. And so in round, say, 8-ish, I can move Darcy Cameron forward, Zeeble to defence, or he's Sheasel to defence. So then I'll have them, and then Gorn straight in as a 500k player, which is pretty awesome. So I know that going into the, in 5 rounds time, I've got an out of a number 1 ruck that's probably going to be pretty good and pretty competitive for a very cheap price. And if I consider Darcy Cameron as a forward to be a top 6, then it's just a no-brainer that I've got 2 guys in a top position. So yeah, that's what I'm looking at doing in transitioning. VC and C, guys, so it's probably going to come from that first game, the VC. So Bulldogs and Lions. So the one thing I noticed is that Jared Berry, who is obviously their run with player and the guy that's more that defensive mid, he had copped a shoulder knock late after the restart against the Demons. And he was taken off, and I'm not. He's had shoulder issues pretty much the last 2 or 3 years. I'm not sure if it was just a stinger and he was fine, or if it's an actual issue. Like, he might not play this week. If not, then I will be running Bont as VC 100%, because I think that he goes to Bont. He's the most logical matchup there. If he is playing, then I'm probably more likely to go Dunkley as the VC there. And I will probably captain Laird against Port in the showdown on the Saturday afternoon. So fairly simple. And if I just pop that in now, so let's go with the Bont currently and Laird captain. That is what I'm looking at doing moving into round 3. All right, guys, keep an eye out. We were going to try and record tonight, but we're going to be recording tomorrow night the pod because first of all, it's really late now. I had touch footy, which is why I'm in my touch footy singlet. And the lads, I know Ben's really snowed under with marking and all that sort of stuff that he has to do. And we've all got personal lives as well. So apologies we couldn't get it out tonight. Hopefully this will tide you over until then. But catch you guys. We'll see you next time. Cheers.